there was a big moment where we found there's only one gene that scientists have identified that cause gray hair. It's this IRF4 gene. That to us was really huge to find out that there's other factors that are contributing to gray hair and there's things we can be doing about it.
So Allison and Jay, thank you so much for being here. I am especially excited about this episode because this product is so unique and so needed. And I like to kind of start every episode. Usually it's asking my guest what their first skincare memory is. But I think for both of you, it's only appropriate to ask what your favorite or what your earliest hair care memory is. So Allison, let's start with you.
Oh, sure. It's a very good one for the topic of the conversation and for our company. It's actually when I was in preschool, my mom was picking me up from preschool pickup. And I said, Mom, why are you the only one mom that has gray hair? And she was mortified and went and dyed her hair the next day. Now looking back, I have young kids and, I'm about the age that I was when I said this to my mom, and it was such a precocious, like awful thing for a kid to say and point out. And, it had my mom dyeing her hair for decades before accepting her white strands. But it's just a very apropos, thing to be thinking about where it came to this moment where we're trying to help solve for gray hair.
That is so funny. And Jay?
I grew up in New Jersey, so that meant that my mom spent a lot of time on her hair every morning. And it was really about making it big and having it stay in place. So from a very early age, I was really interested in grooming my own hair. So that meant like I had a barber when I was really young. Unfortunately, he called me Brian and not Jay. I never corrected him. And it was really, for me, it was always really top of mind to like put gel into my hair and to style it. And now being a hairstylist kind of all these years later and really being involved in this, grooming yourself every day was really a big part of, my childhood. So I thank my mom and our New Jersey roots for really making that prominent.
That is so funny. I think when I think of New Jersey, I think of hair, to be honest. So that seems appropriate.
Yeah, Texas and New Jersey. Those are the two.
Yeah,
places.
exactly. So your brand Arey has been called the wrinkle cream of hair care. And as a dermatology PA, of course, anti-aging when it comes to skincare, we've kind of that term has become kind of this like villainized term, but I still use it because there isn't a better one out there, right? Maybe pro-aging. But in terms of skincare, it's such an important part of my practice and what I educate on. And when it comes to hair care, we're always interested in how to make our hair look thicker, more vibrant, more healthy. But until now, we weren't even aware there was a solution for graying other than just coloring your hair. So I want to start with maybe you guys can tell us a little bit more about the science of graying hair, because obviously that's where it all starts.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly touch on kind of why we started this too, and it's really from a very personal reason and story. It's Jay's been my hairstylist for 9 years now, and when I first saw a few gray hairs, I went to him and I was like, I want to get on top of it, right? I want to do something about it. And then he was like, well, that's great, but right now you can just dye your hair. Like, wait as long as humanly possible, because you get on that bandwagon, you can't really get off. But it really prompted us to question why that was the case, why there was no proactive solution. And so then the next natural question was, well, what causes gray hair? So that's what led us to looking into the science behind why we go gray. And there was a big moment where we found there's only one gene that scientists have identified that cause gray hair. It's this IRF4 gene, and it accounts for about 30% of why we go gray. So that to us was really huge to find out that there's other factors that are contributing to gray hair and there's things we can be doing about it.
And I think at that same point when Allison kind of had come to me and said I had my first gray hair, I was in a moment of, I'd been a hairstylist for about 18 years at that point. I'd seen a lot of people start coloring their hair, and the life cycle of it was, okay, it's just a couple of spots, and then gradually it would progress. And with that progression, it would become shorter time frames in between coloring your hair, and then it would ultimately lead to frustration. So I was kind of questioning, is hair color potentially, making gray hair worse over time, because you're putting these chemicals not only on the hair, but on the scalp. And that was really kind of what led us to these other factors, and oxidative stress being a big thing. But honestly, I don't know that people really understood what oxidative stressors were, and how many different ways in our lifestyle we could be access to them, whether it's sun or smoking, chemicals that we use. If you really look at like where people go gray first, it was their front hairline. And so that's obviously sun, but then there's also the overlap of chemicals that we use for both skincare and hair care. And then combine that with this solution, if you will, which is hair color at the time, it was potentially then, making this worse throughout the overall head. So it seemed as if it was a really ripe time to be able to provide people with proactive solutions from where hair care was only reactive at that point. It was, I have gray hair, I have dry hair. What do I do now to mend it? As opposed to looking at the scalp and looking at it from what can we do to grow better hair in the future that maybe has less of these issues that we're experiencing once it's grown.
It's so interesting. And I think so many would be upset to hear that their solution, their temporary solution, is potentially making the issue worse, right? That's never what we want to hear. We all, especially in this society, in this time, we're so interested in being proactive with everything with our health. So it only makes sense that there's this true appetite for something for aging hair. And I know that your product, obviously, its claim to fame is that it can help reverse and prevent graying hair, but it also kind of supports the hair in other ways too and helps with other signs of hair aging. Can you tell us a little bit about other things that happen to our hair as we age other than graying?
Well, so there's a couple different factors, right? The first thing is obviously there's the color change. But as we started to dig deeper into this, we realized that beyond the color change, what that inherently will do to the hair is it will change its texture. So when the hair doesn't have that color anymore, it can become coarse and dry, and it doesn't have the same makeup that it would if it were a, colored healthy hair strand. And so we started to look at, factors like the hair growth cycle and looking at how we can help to increase that hair growth cycle. And then what factors could be getting in the way of this, whether it's, these oxidative stressors bringing free radicals to the hair follicle. And then from there, looking at, okay, I have these strands that have grown. So we have our topical products, which work for future hair growth. But then we also have a host of conditioning products that specifically target the way in which gray hair changes and these other factors that happen. Where what we found is when we looked at gray hair products, a lot of them were to mend the color of them. So if it gets a little yellow over time, we add a, purple shampoo into the regimen. But there wasn't any conditioning agents or gentle shampoos that were specifically treating this new fabric of hair in a way that could make it look and feel better. Because there's going to be people out there that are going to embrace their gray hair. And, we really kind of took this from a perspective of we are not anti-gray, but we want to make sure that the gray hair that you have or the natural hair color you have looks and feels its best as we age. And we felt like that was really the place that we were coming from, was to try and kind of meet everybody and offer solutions at the different phases that they were at in that hair cycle.
Yeah, and I would just add, hair changes just like skin changes in multiple ways. Like it's wrinkles, but it's also sunspots, loss of elasticity. Like there's not just one thing that happens with your skin. And I think people are very aware of that. But same thing with hair. It doesn't just turn gray. It gets coarser, duller, drier. There's so many other factors. And so we're trying to, obviously we're leading with the gray, but trying to help addressing all those aging issues.
And I think that was, Amy, one of the things that we learned early on when we started with our supplement. We started to see that the first group of people that we were really testing it on, they were noticing factors like softer hair and, thicker, fuller, healthier feeling hair. And so it was this combination that showed us that, okay, it's not just the color change, it's all these other factors. And we realized that there are other solutions on the market for these things, but we found, a lot of pride in being able to combine this very visual, identifier, which is gray hair, along with these other, signs of aging hair.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you said, Jay, about you're not anti-gray. I think it's important that we mention, especially on a podcast like this, that aging is a privilege, and we're lucky. I'm grateful for every gray hair and every wrinkle, but we also want to live our lives feeling and looking like our most vibrant selves. So whether that be someone who wants to embrace their gray but wants to improve the quality of their hair, or maybe somebody who is not looking forward to those grays and wants to keep them at bay as long as possible, which is the category that I fall into. I think it's nice that we have so many options that are actually going to be proactive. And so I want to ask you guys, you have a range of products, a range of really exciting products. Obviously, you started with your supplement first, it sounds like, and then you have a lot of amazing topicals too. Does the level of gray kind of feed into what a person should pick, which products they should pick to use? Like for me, I found 1 or 2 gray hairs ever. Should I be using the supplement or should I be sticking with topicals until I see more gray?
I think, and Jay, you can add to this, but what I often ask people is, what would you most likely use in your regimen? Because the most important thing is consistency. And so it's whatever fits into your routine the easiest. So maybe it's shampoo and conditioner, right? It's like, I'm doing that anyways. I might as well do something proactively, get on top of it early, get it into, into the follicles. And then maybe, as you age and may see a little bit more, it's like, okay, then maybe I'll add the supplement and the serum. Now this is becoming, I want to tackle it a little bit more aggressively. But for me, we started with the supplement because I was like, I just want to take a pill. I just want it to be easy. I don't want to have to think about it. I want to add it into my regimen. It depends on everybody's individual habit, so that's what I would say. But let's see what Jay says.
Well, I think it first starts with like an evaluation of like your lifestyle, right? So for me, I hadn't really taken any supplements when we had started. And I also evaluated that I maybe wasn't eating as healthy as I could have. So it seemed like, an easy lifestyle step for me was the supplement. Now, the supplement is something that I take every night before bed, and it's such a part of my routine now, and it kind of gives me this peace of mind because we did identify several vitamin and mineral deficiencies that were, specifically associated with gray hair, early gray hair, premature gray hair, all these different things. And then there's the antioxidant element of oxidative stress comes from, yes, outside factors, but it also comes from inside factors like digestion and foods that you're actually eating and how the body can process them. But then, looking at the topicals, we really identified a great group of ingredients, specifically this, individual peptide that has been shown to slow and repigment gray hair by giving the hair follicle what's needed to stimulate more melanin. So for me, it definitely is an inside out, outside in approach. And where, I definitely think though, if, very healthy person, you do think you have all those vitamins and minerals coming in, topicals are a great place to start. But for the peace of mind, knowing that you're fueling the body with what's needed to help those cells potentiate, that would mean, taking both the supplement and using one of the topicals.
Great. And for somebody who maybe is beyond that 30% of graying, I know that that's kind of the ideal range from 0 to 30% to really get that proactive approach with these products. Someone who's beyond that 30%, would you recommend them still using the Arey products, and why? What benefits might they still see?
Yeah, I would say that we definitely have found, great results with people that are beyond that 30%, but we try and help them understand what those results could be, right? Because as the higher levels of percentages increase, then you have, a higher contrast. So sometimes it could be difficult for someone to notice the hair that they are preserving pigment in or relative to the gray hair. But that's where we also identified that those texture changes could be mended through using and making that hair look and feel its best. But we always try and make sure that we are very clear about what's possible, right? This isn't a situation where someone could see full reversal of that gray, but they can make the gray that they have healthier and then ultimately slow the process to a point where you're not fully having a head of white hair as it evolves, but you will have a really healthy looking head of hair that has a sprinkling of both of those. And I think that's, that's really from us, it's a messaging of, what's possible.
Yeah, I think managing those expectations is really important. And as we know, gray hair is loss of that pigmentation. And once that hair is white, we really can't reverse that process, right? So I think it's important that the expectations are managed. But also, I think all of us can think of people we know, or maybe people we see online, who have gone fully gray or fully white, but still have the most beautiful quality hair. So, even once you're completely white, that it doesn't mean you want to stop taking care of your hair and make it look as luscious and vibrant as possible.
Well, and that's really the key, is making sure that you have products that do address the specific characteristics of that. Whereas, when you lose color inside of a hair strand, you're losing a great, amount of substance. So the way that we like to look at it is kind of like a balloon that has lost air. The exterior structure is going to be somewhat rigid and somewhat inconsistent. Whereas a hair strand is not ultimately smoothed by putting something on top of it, but it's by putting something into it so that it can fill itself up from the inside out. And that is where, hair care really, we need to understand that putting mass back into that hair strand is really what's going to help it look and feel its best and not get weighed down by products that might just sit on the exterior of the hair strand.
Absolutely. And we all know that feeling, and that weighed down feeling is doesn't make your hair look good, right? Doesn't make your hair look healthy. So, and that's actually one thing I love about the serum personally. That's one of the ones I use the most consistently, is it really doesn't make my hair feel weighed down, which is really important to me when I'm using a scalp serum. There's so many scalp serums on the market, and this one seems to really just blend into the hair very nicely.
And because that one was really formulated from a skincare perspective. All of our products are actually formulated from skincare toward hair care, and the difference is that hair care, we treat hair differently because we assume that it's more durable. But we don't realize that, it really comes from a healthy scalp. So that one was formulated, without oil and without scent for the purpose of making sure that there was no barrier of entry to people and so that it could be used most consistently. Because with this, like Allison said earlier, it is all about choosing what you are going to use most consistently because that's what's going to give you the best result. We've, done the hard work of making sure that those ingredients are in these different touch points. But you have to be honest with yourself and realize, hey, this is going to fit into my routine. And, we want to make sure that it is kind of a seamless transition.
It's kind of like sunscreen. One thing we always say is the best sunscreen is the one you'll use. So it sounds like the best Arey product for you is the one that you're going to consistently use, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And can you tell me a little bit about the dry shampoo? Because this is a really unique product and I'd love to hear kind of your take on it and what makes it so unique. There really isn't anything like it.
Well, so with the dry shampoo, I will say that, I've been a hairstylist now for 21 years. And when I started to, discover powder dry shampoos, about a decade ago, I really loved the two-part element of it, which is obviously, yes, there's, kind of prolonged time in between washing, but then there's also this element of texture that it gives to the hair that is, somewhat touchable and kind of like really helps someone who has maybe fine hair add volume to it. And so, when we went into the formulation of this, we saw this both in the duty of, obviously kind of, smoothing out the oils in the hair, but also as a product that you put on after you wash your hair onto freshly clean hair that could use some texture and some life to it to make it feel as if it's kind of come back to life. And then in that, we, made a conscious decision to, take our dehydrated, melanine complex and put that in there because once you look at powder dry shampoo versus an aerosol, in an aerosol, 70 to 90% of the ingredients are actually just propellants. So that really leaves a very small percentage, which is beneficial for, the actual dry shampoo qualities. And so within that, we, identified ingredients for the powder dry shampoo that were great. And then we realized that there's this element of rehydration that can happen, whether it's, perspiration from your scalp, going into the shower and rehydrating these ingredients. And it made for a great opportunity for someone to use this product for the styling and extension in between washing. But then when they go into the shower, exposing their scalp to these positive ingredients kind of without them knowing.
Yeah, I think that really sounds like the best approach, right? To get it done without anyone even being aware.
Well, yeah, and it's a kind of like a product where if you don't have any gray hair, you still want to have access to a great product that does have those qualities. And that is where, for us, we're science focused, but we are really about delivery systems, and we are about making sure that each of these products performs at its best for all the different, use cases.
And you don't want to feel like you're compromising. I think sometimes when we pick a product that is targeted for an issue like this one, it feels like we're compromising on the quality of the product, maybe even the cosmetic elegance of the product or how it makes our hair feel after styling. So that can be a bit of a barrier for people if they feel like it doesn't make their hair feel the best. So that's so important that it was formulated in that way. I think that makes it really easy for people to kind of get on board with it. So I want to talk to you both a little bit about kind of the background of the brand. And Allison, I know that you have a little bit of business background. Is that right?
Yep. Yes, this is the 12th company I've been involved in.
12?
So this is not my first rodeo. Yes.
I knew it was extensive, but 12, that's so impressive.
Well, thank you. This is the third startup I've done. So this is, third's a charm, hopefully.
Yeah, well, I certainly think so. So is it one of those things where you just kind of, when you see an issue, immediately your mind goes to what can be done? What brand can I start to mediate this?
That's so funny. No, I'm really an executor. So I was very good at running other people's ideas and like creating them and scaling them. And people kept saying to me, why don't you run your own company? I mean, I had a skirt company many, many moons ago when I was in my 20s. That was like a side hustle hobby. And I didn't really take it too seriously. But then when we were talking about this, Jay and I, it was like, oh my gosh, no, this is my idea. Like it was sort of interesting that it wasn't really like a light bulb moment. I think it was like over the course of many, many months and many conversations, but we realized this is not just a me issue. This could potentially help many more people, especially since literally 100% of us go gray at some point in our lives. So it's a big, big market. But yeah, it was fun to be able to, come up with a concept, have the right partners to work with. We were lucky that we had access to manufacturers and, folks that could help us do this that don't normally take on startups. So our supplement manufacturer and our topical manufacturer don't work with startups. They're quite big, but the idea to them was very appealing and different and innovative. And so they took the risk on us, which was huge for it. And then Jay's wife is also involved in head of all things creative. So that was really important in developing the brand. And a lot of it is about timing and kismet and like putting the right people and the right things in place. So I feel very lucky that it all came together.
And how long, how long was this brewing for you guys? I know this conversation probably came up every time you got your hair done, but how long was it from the inception of the idea until you were both like, I think we really have something here. Let's kind of run with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking about for like a year or two before then sitting down in 2020.
I will note that, like, what was unique about Allison and I's services together, where she'd come and get a haircut, was that we always kind of volleyed back and forth ideas. She would, bring in an idea about, this is what's trending in hair care. And I'd have an idea about capes. We were always strategizing something, and then we'd come together and we'd chat. And so I think, probably about a year and a half before that is when Allison, started to kind of think about color. And then, slowly, I think there was just many factors that kind of came in, whether, I think it's really important to note, like, Allison's father had identified a link between on-scalp hair color at home and certain cancers. And so it was these different moments that really kind of solidified that there was something that we needed to do. And then obviously I kind of was running the idea by some clients every now and again and saying, hey, like, if there was a solution for this, would you try it? And I think we were blown away by the fact that it was, not just women, but a lot of my male clients were really like on board, like, yes, I would like to try something for that. And I think once we realized that it was, there was many people out there, it definitely came to light. But then 2020 happened. And so, I think our first meeting officially was January 2020, where we made it official, and Allison brought croissants. And then, 3 months later, it was a moment where we all were, at home, and I personally couldn't see clients. And that was really when I think we doubled down and said, hey, let's research this. Let's figure out a way. And obviously, my wife, Amy, kind of coming on board, helped visualize and bring that to life in a way that was somewhat seamless.
So it sounds like the pandemic definitely propelled the business, which, it kind of went either way for people. I think for many of us in this space, if we had an idea, it really just, now's the time, right? Now or never. I have all this time to just get it done. But that can be really scary too, because there's just so much unknown about what was going to happen. And especially starting a business, during that time was probably felt risky, but hopefully has paid off. And I think with the product that you guys have, it's so unique and there's such a need for it that it almost can't not work, like it has to be something, because it's really, you're creating a category,
Yeah.
Well, and I'd say too that, we were during the pandemic, no one was getting their hair done. So everybody that was, doing their roots every 4 to 6 weeks, they were experiencing their gray hair. They were seeing maybe a lifestyle change. Whereas before the pandemic, a lot of people were doing an incredible amount of services weekly. And then I think as we kind of got further and further away from that, people realized, oh, maybe this doesn't need to be a part of my lifestyle. Maybe I can embrace my gray. Maybe I can, do X, Y, and Z differently. So it was a combination of, research and science coming together, and then a general acceptance from a group of consumers that were interested in a different choice or a different way forward.
And did you find that your male clients were more likely to try this over coloring their grays?
Yeah, well, I think what we found is that the comfort level with men in coloring is very few, because first of all, it grows out quite quickly. And so, no man would ever want to be called out for having colored their hair and seeing a root, which is, obviously a slightly different thing that we would see between a male and female. But also too, I just don't think that there were great solutions out there for men. It was either too dark or it was a really pretty volatile chemical, especially when it comes to beards, because that's a coarser hair strand that needs more chemicals to kind of ignite that. And I think at that point, people were like, I'm not going to put that on my face, not realizing that your face and your scalp are exactly the same thing.
It's just an extension,
right? If anything, your scalp has more to do with the body when it comes to blood circulation and lymphatic drainage and regulation of, different factors and protections. So I think, it was, the men were up for it. And also I think they were comfortable enough to see 5 or 10% gray and be like, I'm good with this. I just don't want it to be, like we say, a full Anderson Cooper, where it's, 100% white over time.
Yeah, my husband is starting to gray pretty quickly, and this is something that we always talk about. Because when it just started, it was like, oh, it's so cute, and now he's just like, wait. Like I'm not ready for this. I wasn't expecting this. So I can totally understand that.
The joke I sometimes make is that salt and pepper is great, but when a dish gets too salty, there's not much you can do with it. So, at
there's
the
no
end,
going back.
There's no going back from that.
Oh, that's so true. He's definitely having a little bit of like an identity crisis with it. So I have to get him. I have some of the supplement. I have to give it
we
to
can
him.
help. We can help him.
Yeah. It would be fun to track too, because he's definitely somebody, he has access to everything. I've given him every skincare product in the book, and he still uses, one cleanser and one sunscreen, and won't use a retinoid, won't use a vitamin C. But I think this is motivating enough for him to make him use it.
My husband doesn't use anything, but he's obsessed with our specifically our scrub, which I was like, that's interesting. Like, I didn't think my husband would be a scrub user, but I think it has a great applicator that's really easy to use, and he just like loves the feeling of the cleansing. But yeah, he's one of our biggest fans. He uses everything, and now like thinks he's a hair model. He's very, very into his hair. So.
I love that. The scrub is actually one I wanted to bring up because it blows my mind that more scalp scrubs on the market don't have an applicator like that. Like it's impossible to use a scalp scrub when you can't apply it directly. It's like it just ends up in my hair and nothing on my scalp if I don't have an applicator like that.
Well, that was really important. When we were doing the formulation of that, we also looked really heavily into skincare, and we saw that a lot of times, again, we think the scalp is so durable. So a lot of the scalp scrubs that were out there were very, physical exfoliator based, whether it's a salt scrub and, kind of these abrasive materials. But when we started to look into skincare, we're like, wow, there's this salicylic, glycolic, lactic acid combination that you can create. And it actually specifically targets the buildup that happens. It's not about the feeling of abrasion. It's about making sure that the oils that are built up and the dead skin cells can be removed. And so that was really a light bulb moment, especially for people that don't, like, we're not recommending people wash their hair every day, but on those days in between, which I noticed on your Instagram talking about shampoo regimens, we do have this buildup that can happen where our hair might feel great, but our scalp needs to be, taken care of in a different way. And so this is an option where people can use this on days in between to preserve the texture of their hair, but make sure that the environment of their scalp is healthier.
I notice a huge difference when I'm really addressing the scalp buildup portion, because like you said, then I'll, if I don't, I have a wash day and my hair feels great, but I don't make very much oil on my scalp. I'm naturally kind of a dry skin type. But even if I didn't address the buildup, the next day my roots were oily. Once I started addressing that buildup, it made a huge difference. And I think people are surprised to hear too that product buildup can have more implications than just, a greasy scalp. You can have hair thinning and things like that. So it is important. And I think nowadays, so many of us are using leave-in products. Like I use tons of dry shampoo. I use other leave-in products. It really is important that we're taking a beat to kind of address that and exfoliate the scalp gently, very gently.
And there's one thing that we learned on that tip, which was interesting, is that, when you go through the hair growth cycle, you have your, growing phase, your resting phase, your falling out phase, and the time frame from the time where a hair strand falls out of the head to when a new one actually pushes its way through to the scalp can be anywhere between 3 and 4 months. And so that was a big part of this, is that if, a percentage of your scalp has these little wells where the follicle has nothing in it, that's a very important time to make sure that those dead skin cells and those oils aren't building up where the surface might feel good, but the follicle itself is actually blocked where a new hair strand can't actually present itself. And so once we're looking at that phase of the cycle, this became a really important product. And, obviously then it's a great access too for, this melanine complex where you have this very prepped scalp that is, very able to, because with us, it's all about absorption on our topical products. The formulation itself is meant to absorb and, get rid of, any free radical buildup. But this scrub makes a really excellent vehicle to ensure that.
So each and every one of the products will address graying in addition to the other elements that it's addressing, correct?
Yeah, so the topical products. So, to the root, wash and scrub, and then wait a sec. And then anything that is conditioner, we try and encourage people to leave it off the scalp to prevent that buildup. And those have whether it's UV protection and live-in mist. We have a new product coming out that has some heat protection and helps with, the elasticity of a hair strand, which will help with those other characteristics.
Yeah, sounds so important for before you're going to be heat styling to make sure that elasticity is improved.
So this one is really interesting. So this is a vegan collagen leave-in conditioner. And, there's a lot of bond builders on the market that, kind of address this damaged or coarseness or dryness. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to have one that could be used consistently. And what we also identified is that people that have this, specific fabric of hair, they are typically heat styling in order to make their hair look good on a daily or a weekly basis. So it was a two-part. When we blow dry and style our hair, we have tension from the brush. So the vegan collagen really helps with that elasticity. But then also we have this complex that is a really powerful heat protectant that protects up to 450 degrees of heat that will allow people to not see further damage when they are, doing this styling after using, a treatment that can help to reform the structure of the hair. We also felt that it was important for it to be a leave-on product and be used, in multiple capacities where if you have, I know Allison loves to use it on her hair before she blow dries on wet hair to detangle and kind of prep, but I also equally use it on, coarser, thicker hair on the dry fabric to give some moisture, very similar to how we would put a lotion onto our skin. And then this creates a flexibility that can help to hold style in place because a coarse hair strand is very hard to curl, which we all know, and it's because it doesn't have that flexibility that it was requiring.
Well, that's really exciting. I think anytime there's that versatility with a product, it really increases compliance because we know we can use it in multiple ways. And I know for myself, sometimes I'll forget to apply a product on wet hair. So if it's something I can get away with applying on dry hair, I'm more likely to use it consistently because then I can just add it, before I heat style my dry hair.
Yeah, that was important to us with all the different, delivery systems that we have, that there are, from the styling side, Leave-In Mist can be used to detangle wet hair, but it can equally be used to refresh, second day hair that might have some sleep on it. Wait a Sec can be used on days, after you've washed, but it could also be used right after you wash so that, you are adding that texture. And, Mend, which is this new product, is similar. It does have versatility in its formulation. And we think that that's really important because we don't really intend to create many products. We intend to create products that are very specific and then have these different use cases that can work with all different hair types and textures, specifically when it comes to our topical products, because, fundamentally what helps hair grow better is the same for all of us, non-exclusive to any skin tone, hair texture, or type. So, that is, where we come from, a formulation of all hair types.
What I love about the brand, and all my favorite brands are this way, I notice I'm very drawn to them, is that your products are very intentional. It doesn't feel like you're just piggybacking one product off of your star SKU. It really feels like each one is launched with something very specific in mind, and it has its own place in a regimen. And I think that's really important because otherwise it gets very convoluted and confusing. And you guys are also really great about your education, your hair education, which I think is so important now. So you really kind of give that framework to the consumer so they can kind of understand what their own hair needs and very easily make a decision based on the products that you offer, which I think is really, really amazing.
I'd say that, I've really pushed that back to our very beginning story, Allison, where, as a client, Allison was always someone that made me dig deeper on different topics, whatever it was, whether it was a haircut or a product. And I think, as an educator for my entire career, we really look to our customers. So the products that we've developed over the last 2 years have come from customer service inquiries where people are asking us about the product and how it performs for them. And so this has all really been developed. We are a bigger company, but we really try and keep a smaller root with the people that have trusted us over these years and try and help them with the issues or with the concerns that they are facing, because that we think is so important, not assuming what people need, but really listening to what they need.
Allison, I wanted to quickly touch on something that you guys mentioned earlier. Your dad had found some sort of a link to issues with hair dye on the scalp. Did this, first of all, if you can share any insight on that. And then also when you started to become gray, was this something that was kind of in the back of your head? Like, I don't think I want to go ahead with this.
Yeah, so my dad's a doctor and a pharmaceutical consultant. He's an internal medicine doctor, and he came across this NIH article linking at-home hair dye use to increased risk of breast cancer. We have also found articles since then linking it to other cancers. So it's one of those products that I think is so interesting because in my career I've worked for I worked for a natural deodorant brand, helping to advise them. I helped advise an almond milk company that had better for you ingredients, and it seems like we've been trying and questioning all these things, but for some, hair dye is like something people don't, it's like, I don't want to know about it. Like, it's just, and you like, don't use it when you're pregnant, but then use it when you're done being pregnant. Seem kind of strange. So I think that it's a very personal decision. Everybody has to make their own risk benefit analysis, but our job is just to inform people of what the science says, what the potential risks are, and Jay can speak better to like the difference between at-home hair dye use and salon hair dye use, which I think is a very important thing to talk about. But it did really help prompt for us the reason to be in existence of like, we think that people are going to question this practice more and more in the future. And so we want to create a solution that's clean. All of our ingredients are clean. That's why we're in Credo. It's very important for us to have better for you ingredients. But yeah, it continues to be a huge reason why we exist. But we have customers who do use hair dye, but this has enabled them to be able to use hair dye less often, dye less parts of their hair, and it just kind of eases that burden that hair dye often comes with. But I'll let Jay speak more to the sort of differences and nuances in hair dye.
Well, so when we identified this with Dr. Conrad, it also led us to understand or question, so how many people are coloring their hair at home versus in a salon? And so at that time, there was a staggering statistic that 83% of people were coloring their hair at home.
Wow.
And so that meant that this was obviously a huge industry, but what was it about this that was making it more volatile? The truth is that a box of color that turns your hair red, brown, or blonde has to work for everybody on this call the exact same way, whether our hair's thick, coarse, dark, light, whatever it may be. And the way that you ensure that happens is by using a higher volume of the developer. For example, if Allison, were to come in and say, hey, I want to do hair color as a stylist, I can control the level of developer between 5 volume up to 40 volume. And I can choose to go as, little as I need to just to move the hair color to where it needs to get to. But that box of color likely actually has 25 to 30% developer or volume developer in it. And that means that it will ensure we all get the same result. But also when you look at the application style at home, a lot of times there's gloves involved and a lot of massaging into our scalp, not a brush. And, it would take me, for any of my clients, 30 to 40 minutes to apply color so that it's strategically on the hair and less on the scalp, or apply it to areas that just have gray or just need the color. And so I think what we identified is that, we've seen people change color and remove ammonia and insert different ingredients. But at the end of the day, the catalyst for all hair color is this developer. And that developer is what makes it so volatile. And the real difference is that a stylist has the control to, make that safer. Whereas at home, you really don't know what you're getting. And when we started to look into a lot of these at-home hair colors, they don't list the volume of developer on the box, which is quite concerning because that isn't really giving enough information, because that truthfully is the most volatile part of the chemical combination.
That probably made this product just kind of lit a fire under you a little bit, right? Like, we need to get a different solution into the hands of the consumer so that they don't feel like they're obligated to use these products.
And like Allison said, extend that time in between. It was really about, making it so that, okay, I have a couple gray hairs, fine, use a little bit of color in that spot, but don't allow it to, continue on and be, further developing. And we've seen a lot of great results with, before and afters of customers that from the time that they started and they've continued to color in between, seeing that decrease of gray, which means that when it grows in, it's not as an unfortunate of a transition where you see that gray root with the dark brown ends. It's softening that transition, which is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes it really helpful. I want to ask you both, if each of you had to start with just one product, see someone is just kind of looking to get their toes wet, what product would you recommend that they start with first? Allison, we'll start with you.
Whatever product they're going to use the most. I mean, I'm sorry to beat a dead horse here, but I think that is the really key thing. I mean, obviously it's hard for me to choose one product because I use them all and love them all. But I really do think it's what are you going to be most committed to? Because we do get the question a lot, what happens if I stop using the product? It's like, well, what happens when you stop brushing your teeth? Like, you will get cavities. Like, you will see more gray hair. This is a lifestyle commitment, but so is dyeing your hair, so is brushing your teeth, so is using skincare product, so it's reshifting that like thinking of it, not thinking this is like a temporary quick solution. This is something you're committed to. But yeah, starting with something that you will actually be committed to.
I would choose To the Root. And the reason for that is because it's a very versatile product. Speaking to, your husband saying he is, getting some gray hairs. So I use To The Root on my beard. I use it on my head hair. It helps not only give kind of these proactive ingredients to the skin, but it also helps to kind of style the beard and help it kind of stay in place. And the same thing with the head hair. And I find that it really does, beyond the scalp benefits, it also leaves the hair in a healthy state. It does have this additional ingredient called panthenol. And that panthenol helps to, make the hair have this kind of volumized feel. And so I think for a lot of customers, we want to get immediate results, and Arey does take some time to start to show its results from what you're growing, but this can make the hair and beard look and feel great kind of from that first use.
Amazing. I'm going to give him that one because it sounds like he's going to love it.
We'll give him that one. We'll ship it to him. Don't buy it.
Oh, he's going to love it. The beard especially, I think he's going to be sold on that. He's always trying different beard products. So one that helps reverse the graying, I think will be top of his list. So I have one more question for each of you. Jay, I want to start with you. What is your, as a celebrity hairstylist for over 18 years, what is your most underrated hair care tip? Something that people don't think about.
Yes. So I would actually say brushing your hair on dry hair. I think that what I found is whether you have oil buildup or you have dry, coarse hair, a lot of times we don't realize that the body is producing this oil to lubricate and hydrate both the hair and scalp. So a lot of times we see this buildup and we try and, get rid of it. And whether you have fine hair, coarse hair, dry hair, whatever it may be, we can all brush our hair in the evening to help spread these oils out. And so I find that, throughout my career, I always start every service by dry brushing everybody's hair from the perspective of obviously removing the oils or moving them around the hair strand, but also from the scalp stimulation. Because beyond what we do at Arey, blood circulation at the scalp and, helping to move these, oils around is likely the healthiest thing that we can do that doesn't require, a product or anything. It's just about fitting it into our routine when it fits.
That's a great tip. And I think sometimes I forget, when I'm brushing my hair before I go to sleep, sometimes I'll forget to start at the scalp. It's just easy to kind of do a brush at the end. So that's a really great tip. And Allison, because we are very passionate about female empowerment and just our younger generation coming up, and there's so many more female business owners now and co-founders, and it's incredible. If there's one thing that you could tell your younger self, what would it be?
Oh man, I'd say stop stressing out so much. Although I would tell myself that now, it's a continuous issue. I think it's a lot of time. I come from, my dad's a doctor, my mom's a dietitian, my sister is a doctor. I was kind of raised to be high achieving. And I put a lot of self pressure on myself. My parents didn't necessarily put pressure on me. It was just, I was like living around it. So it was just kind of natural. And it's really hard to try to be, an A student your whole life and achieve and, try for all these really hard things, but it's also equally gratifying when you can do those things and you feel really good about yourself and confident. But it comes with a lot of stress. And so I think, my path was not exactly linear. I didn't go to medical school to become a doctor. It's sort of like I went on this different path. And now looking back, it kind of makes sense and it all comes together. But when you're in the moment, it's like, what am I doing with my life? And is this going to end up with anything? Like, what am I going to look back on and say I achieved? And so, I think we all need to kind of give ourselves a break and trust the process, trust yourself in making decisions. And, your gut instinct typically is right. And so listen to that as well as your head and your heart are very important in making decisions.
I love that. I think so many times as we get older, we look back and realize that everything really did have to happen the way it did in order for us to get to where we are. So it can seem so overwhelming and crazy in the moment, but it all works out in the end. Well, where can everybody shop Arey?
AreyGrey.com. So AreyGrey. I will say a little plug in for the name because people always ask they're like, is it Arey? It's like, all right. And it's for the French word meaning stop. So that's sort of where it comes from, silent T at the end, spelled differently for our version, but also rhymes with gray. But AreyGrey.com. We're also in Credo stores nationwide. We launched with them June 1st, so you can find us in real life. And can we plug a discount code for listeners?
Yeah, sure.
Skin Enthusiast 20 for 20% off.
You guys have generously agreed to do a little giveaway, which is really exciting. So two listeners are going to get your entire line, that's amazing. So all they have to do is follow you guys on Instagram at Arey Grey. And then all you have to do is comment on the IG reel when you see this episode's reel post and let us know, what did you take from this episode? Is there something you're going to be changing about your hair care routine? Is there a product that you immediately had to try? Let us know what brought you the most value. And 2 US-based winners are going to get the entire line. So that's very generous of you guys. Thank you very much. 2 people are going to be super excited, and I know my husband's going to be excited too.
Yes. I love it.
So thank you both so much for being here. This was really educational and really, really important information.
Oh, this was
Thank
great.
you so much
Thank you so much,
having us.
Amy. Yeah, we appreciate it.